Another village in Bosnia was in ruins. This time, Muslims from Srebrenica had launched a raid against the Serbs.
Ubiju po jednog, dvojicu, trojicu, evo, do sela nisu dolazili, ali su selo sada popalili, kao vidite tu.
Nastupio je trenutak u kome se apsolutno nije moglo očekivati da sve to bude pod nekakvom razumnom kontrolom.
The Serbs decided to seize Srebrenica. This decision would force the Americans to bring peace to Bosnia. But only after the people here had been sacrificed. Srebrenica was a refuge for tens of thousands of Muslims fleeing the Serbs. For 3 years, they'd been surrounded.
Ovaj narod je napačen i on želi slobodu. Želi da se vrati na svoja ognjišta. Želi da živi normalnim životom kako i svi ostali narodi i narodnosti živi.
Nas teroriše za grupom oficira upravo zbog pripreme naroda na takav egzodus, odnosno na operaciju koja se pripremala na Srebrenicu, bio je od strane generalštaba pozvan za instrukcije.
The order was a trick. Once out, Srebrenica's commanders were forbidden to return. The enclave was no longer the top priority for the Bosnian government.
Mnoga primirja, mnogi politički ustupci naših državnih organa bili uslovljeni da se spasi Srebrenica i žepa.
Srebrenica was doomed. The Bosnian government had realized that nobody in the West, not even their most ardent supporter, would lift a finger to save it.
Already in June, the fate of Srebrenica seemed pretty gloomy. We already then were considering that some kind of swap for at least the smaller of the eastern enclaves for more territory in central Bosnia might be one of the things that would be wise.
In early July, the Serbs attacked. Deprived of its commanders, Srebrenica could not resist the Serb advance.
Naša zadnja poruka je bila da mi više nemamo vremena za javljanje novo. Da je Srebrenica pala i da narod ide u proboj.
To escape the Serb soldiers, thousands of Muslims in Srebrenica fled into the forest.
Prvi prijelaz front linije bio je hod kroz minsko polje. Išli smo u koloni jedan po jedan, ona ispred mene, gdje stane tu moram stati ja, ako neću da nagazim na mene.
They set out on a 40-mile walk through a forest ringed by Serb patrols.
Zamislite 15.000 ljudi kad se postroji jedan iza drugog, jedan po jedan.
Those Muslims who couldn't face the trek clung to the UN for protection. "25,000 Muslims now overwhelmed the UN base in Srebrenica. But the handful of UN troops there were shoved aside by the Bosnian Serb army and its commander, General Mladic.
Koliko ti je godina? Kako ti ime? Molim vas, budite veoma strpljivi. Samo malo. Svi koji žele da ostanu, mogu da ostanu. Svi koji žele da napuste ovu teritoriju također mogu. Obezbedili smo dovoljno.
The leader of the Serbs in Bosnia also put on a performance for the cameras.
Our army is very, very responsible. People, civilians, as well as UN personnel are completely safe and secure.
The Serbs laid on coaches for the civilians, but when they reached Muslim territory, only women and children emerged. The men of Srebrenica had disappeared.
Bilo je stvarno strašno dočekati tu noć. Kupe odozdo ljude koji spavaju, odvode i tamo, tišina je malo, zatim se čuje love psa, laju, zatim opet tišina, čuju se kasnije meci, pobiju i vraćaju se na drugu stranu, uzimaju opet.
There was no refuge. In this field alone, some 2,000 of Srebrenica's men are buried. The killing went on for days.
U ceranskim lukama smo naišli, znači, na leševe, nisu bili pokopani. Od 130, možda do 200 ljudi je bilo strijeljano tu. Bio je, ne znam, bili smo prvo pokušali da vidimo da li možemo nekog poznati, međutim, bio je smrad veliki, ne znam, nije se moglo tu postupiti.
The Muslims walking through the forest were easy prey for the Serbs.
Sam život u Srebrenici je bio pakao. Ali onaj put, ono što se desilo uz put, to je 9. krug pakla.
Ajde, momci, živite, momci!
Već nas bilo opkolili tu, komplet. Počeli su granatirati. Počeli su zoljama tući na narod. I onda narod nije imao drugog izbora nego i krenuo tamo da se predaje.
Ste mnogo uplašili? Kako se neš uplašiti? Ajde, bole, ne boj, šta se bojiš? Ajde, ajde. Ajde, slobodno.
Ljudi bi počeli da vrište, da postanu agresivni. Ukoliko bi malo oružje, obavezno bi ga upotrijebili.
Tada su počela masovna samoubistva.
Gledao sam 3 druga, 3 dobra druga, kako se zagrlili i jedan od njih izvlači bombu i ubija se 3.
Two years earlier, a French general had made a pledge to the people of Srebrenica.
You are now under the protection of the UN forces.
Now the new French president called on the UN to salvage its honor.
J'ai proposé à nos principaux partenaires, à ceux qui sont les plus attachés à ces règles du droit international, du droit des gens à vivre, à être respectés, de réagir ensemble, de façon concertée, de façon forte et limitée, en clair, de reprendre l'enclave de Srebrenica.
No one believes that either the French or other UN forces in Bosnia were either of a number or with the military equipment required, nor did they have a mandate to carry out what would be an act of war.
Britain's stance cracked open the alliance that had led the UN in Bosnia. President Chirac looked for support elsewhere.
The President heard President Chirac out with great interest, demurred on the, as I recall, on the military wisdom of it or feasibility of it, and then suggested the alternative.
Clinton told the French president he was prepared to use force, but only to create a stable balance of power in Bosnia. So the president's men mapped out a plan. It required transfers of population that earlier they might have condemned as ethnic cleansing. The isolated Muslim enclaves near the border with Serbia would go to the Serbs, but on the other side of the country, a large stretch of Serb lands would go to the Muslims.
And that meant that rather than draw the lines in a kind of a higgledy-piggledy way that might make sense in terms of a detailed negotiation and where the current populations are, to do what we could to have a territory that was as simplified as possible.
The key to the Clinton plan was to bolster Bosnia's ally, Croatia. Croatia had lost a quarter of its territory to rebel Serbs. For 4 years, Croatia's president had been planning to seize it back.
Htjeli smo pokazati i svijetu da zaista raspolažemo sa vojnom snagom, prema tome htjeli smo i Srbima dati znati da je vrijeme da pristanu na mirno rješenje.
Croatia, encouraged by the United States, had built itself an army to crush the rebel Serbs. All they needed was the green light.
We did not think that that kind of an attack could do anything other than create a lot of refugees and cause a humanitarian problem. On the other hand, it always had the prospect of simplifying matters.
We knew a few days before the operation that it was in fact going to occur. I went down to meet with President Tudjman to deliver a démarche.
We are concerned by indication that you are preparing for an offensive in sectors south and north. Znači, imali su tu im služba nije za to.
We made clear to Tudjman that we did not favor military action.
Nakon ovakvog ozbiljnog upozorenja, koje se razumije se da sam ja najozbiljnije razmotrio, nisam odustao, jer sam bio uvjeren da mi možemo postići pobjedu.
Tudjman had read the signals well. 3 days later, his army began shelling the rebel Serbs' capital, Knin. The Croats had a huge advantage in men and armor. They rolled in with ease. The Serb soldiers had already fled. Once again, a centuries-old community was uprooted. This time, more than 100,000 Serbs from Croatia. They had stuck by a regime based on ethnic cleansing. Now they paid the price.
Čini se jednostavno da je velik broj ljudi odraslog srpskog pučanstva bio uključen u te srpske paravojne snage, a drugi dio pučanstva da je bio obmanut da dolaze ustaše, fašisti i da im nema drugo nego da bježe.
To make sure the Serbs never returned, Tudjman's army set their villages alight. They murdered hundreds of old people who'd hung stubbornly on.
Mislio sam da će 60-70% Srba ostati, da će shvatiti da je to demokratska Hrvatska koja im jamči građanska i etnička prava. Prema tome, sami su Srbi odgovorni za takvu sudbinu kao što su je doživjeli.
President Tudjman had achieved an ethnically pure Croatia.
Zastava ovdje znači dovršenje dijela uspostave slobodne i nezavisne Hrvatske.
Bosnia's Muslims had joined their Croat ally in the attack. After 4 years of defeats, the president of Bosnia savored his first big victory.
Bio je vreo dan, usput na moj rođendan je tamo me dočekao naravno general Dudaković, jedan slavni general, ovdje veoma popularan.
Došli ste u našu državu. Koliko imaš, bola?
Ima sad najviše od korpusa, svi. Sad si najbolji.
Ja sam rekao, nek ti je sretna država Bosna i Hercegovina, a kolika je, jesmo li je proširili malo? Jer da se ona se u stvari širi.
Dragi vojnici, pozdrav domovini! Pozdrav!
Bilo je jako mnogo naroda tamo koji je bio oduševljen tek. U stvari, osjećalo se svugde, se osjećalo dah slobode na tim krajevima.
The celebration didn't last long. Were killed. The ballistics experts confirmed that the shell came from Bosnian Serb territory.
2800 millième.
It was just what the Americans were waiting for.
Finally, the decks were cleared for a real military response, not some piece of garbage.
A real bombing campaign, not a pinprick, not just a campaign, not just a bomb or two, not just a day or two, but as much as it took.
I must say that I enjoyed it. I must say that. Because those who killed so many defenseless people, those who aimed baby hospitals, those who aimed children while playing, could finally feel what it means to be targeted, to be defenseless. And they deserved it.
The bombing had hurt the Bosnian Serbs in more ways than one. That morning, when they were at their most vulnerable, they'd been summoned to a secret meeting in the capital of Serbia.
Mi smo znali da ćemo mi biti bombardovani. Čak i da smo ispunili, mi bismo morali biti bombardovani.
The call came from their paymasters, the president of Serbia and the president of Montenegro.
Oni su se stvarno bojali. Mislim da su tad bili svjesni veličine svih grešaka koje su napravili i svjesni činjenice da može da se upropasti sve, da jednostavno nestane Republike Srpske.
The president of Serbia had unleashed Bosnia's Serbs to fight his war. But for 2 years they'd blocked any peace that would have secured his gains. He had to bring them to heel.
I mi smo znali da oni ne mogu da nas dugo prate, da nas dugo slijede, ali ni mi nismo imali drugog izbora. Mi smo morali da se borimo do posljednjega.
I sada je najbitnije da rat što pre stane, a ne da se preciziraju detalji svih mogućih rješenja, jer o detaljima se može beskrajno razgovarati.
Milosevic now demanded that the Bosnian Serbs sign an agreement granting him full power to negotiate a peace.
Mi smo spremni da potpuno zablokiramo sve moguće veze, sve ono što smo znali da eventualno ide kao neka vrsta čak i humanitarne pomoći, da smo spremni da se potpuno odreknemo rukovodstva Republike Srpske.
Bilo je potrebno da mi nastupamo kao Republika Srpska i da štitimo svoje interese.
Njima je bilo veoma teško da potpišu takav jedan sporazum, jer on u suštini znači političko samoubistvo.
There was one man powerful enough to save Karadzic.
Mi smo zamolili patrijarha da tu bude kao dokaz neke savjesti i kao moguće alibi za rukovodstvo Republike Srpske da prihvate naš predlog.
Razlika je neminovno da bude među ljudima, ali one da ne budu, kažem, takve da se izgubi iz vida opšti interes.
The Bosnian Serb leaders surrendered.
we consider President Milosevic's announcement yesterday that he can now negotiate for the Bosnian Serbs something of a procedural breakthrough.
In fact, we knew that we had entered the realm of a serious negotiation for the first time.
As American aircraft pounded the Bosnian Serbs, the American Assistant Secretary of State shuttled round the warring capitals.
President Clinton has set us here today on a mission of peace in a moment of war.
Holbrooke's goal was to persuade the warring presidents to come to a peace conference. To the Serbs, he offered a form of recognition of their mini-state in Bosnia, Republika Srpska.
There's one Bosnia. It's got two parts. Everyone agreed it would have two parts. Sarajevo's concession was to let one part be called Republika Srpska.
We see you on Sunday.
In return, he promised the Bosnian Muslims that US troops would enforce a peace deal. American shuttle diplomacy was backed by American bombing. NATO planes destroyed the Bosnian Serb communications network. They couldn't even make telephone calls. President Milosevic had to do something. He met Holbrooke in Belgrade.
Milosevic says to us, we've got to stop the bombing.
He was challenging Holbrooke's manhood by saying, you're in charge of that country, Ambassador Holbrooke. Can't you, make the bombing stop? Can't you do it?
Holbrooke said that first the shelling of Sarajevo must stop.
The airport has to be open.
Milosevic told him he should talk to the men responsible.
Predsjednik Milošević I ja smo bili u razgovoru sa američkom stranom I obavijestili smo ih da ukoliko žele mogu da se sretnu sa Karadžićem I Mladićem.
Holbrooke looked over and said, well, where are they? He said, they're in a villa about 200 meters away.
Milosevic decided to put Holbrooke on the spot. The Americans had pointedly refused to meet Karadzic and Mladic, who'd been charged with war crimes.
That's one of the few times in this whole negotiating process where I thought Dick Holbrooke was shook.
President Milosevic has made some suggestions, and we're going to take a quick break to caucus among ourselves.
The Americans decided to eat their words. They would meet the Bosnian Serbs.
So we said to Milosevic, wait a minute, we want to set down some ground rules. Number one, no historical lectures, no bullshit.
When the Bosnian Serbs arrived, the Americans told them they must withdraw their heavy weapons from the Sarajevo hills.
Mi nismo mogli da prihvatimo u cijelosti taj ultimatum u tom trenutku jer bi smo izgubili Sarajevo I oko 150.000 naših Srba bi bilo izloženo pokolju, izloženo divljem nastupu muslimanskih vojnika.
To je jedna besmislica. Zamislite, nije završen rat, a da mi odmičemo naše teško oružje kojim branimo narod.
Mladic is getting angrier and angrier, and finally he erupts in another one of his statements about the Serb people, the Serb nation.
Samo im je srpski narod toliko veći trn u oku koliko ovo duže traje, jer je ovo za njih katastrofa, da su sila number one I da trebaju da pregaze svet kao da uzmu četku pa ga prefarbaju u boju koja njima odgovara, a nisu još to raščistili sa nekim malim srpskim narodom.
Now Holbrooke put Milosevic to the test.
I said, Mr. President, you told us we were here to be serious. If we're not serious, we have to go.
They walked out.
Hey, why don't we go outside?
Yeah. Milosevic reminded Mladic that if they stayed out, NATO would destroy his army.
Ja se bojim da je general Ratko Mladić, koga inače cijenim kao oficira I kao čovjeka, nažalost nakon 3,5 godine rata potpuno izgubio kontakt sa realnošću.
The Americans were called back in.
I kada smo dobili garancije da I muslimani moraju da povuku teško oružje I kada smo dobili garancije da muslimani ne smiju da nas napadnu I tada smo postigli neku saglasnost.
The Serbs withdrew the heavy weapons that had crippled Bosnia's capital. The Americans called off their airstrikes. All the Americans needed to start their peace conference was a ceasefire in the rest of Bosnia. The Muslims and their Croat ally scrambled to grab territory while they still could.
Zapravo, Srbi su još uvijek imali više od 49% u svojim rukama. Jasno je da, kako gospodin Izetbegović, tako i ja, da smo smatrali da taj poraz koji su Srbi doživjeli treba iskoristiti.
In the west of Bosnia, Croat artillery and Muslim infantry sliced through Serb lines. The conquering armies drove a new wave of Serb refugees into Serbia and Montenegro.
Prije svega Ameriku animirali sa činjenicom da bi taj veliki egzodus naroda radikalizovao političku atmosferu i to više ne bi zavisilo od odluke bilo kojeg rukovodstva, nego bi objektivno događaji tekli prema tome da se mora ući u rat.
Holbrook took the warning seriously, but now that the Muslims had the bit between their teeth, it would be difficult to persuade them to stop. To put his case, he chose a public display of American friendship for Bosnia, the swearing in of a new ambassador.
And I will faithfully and well discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. After the swearing in, I asked if General Don Carrick and I could see President Izetbegović alone.
We were at that time in the negotiations that if we did not get a ceasefire, that we might not have this moment again for some time.
To persuade Bosnia's president to stop his army, the intelligence officer painted a grim picture.
We were concerned that the Serbs were now reinforcing their area from Sarajevo and others where weapons had been withdrawn.
I said, Mr. President, they're going to be able to punch holes in your lines because they're too thin.
Vojne akcije su s naše strane išle kod nas jako dobro. Nama vojnici su procjenjivali da ne bi trebalo zaustaviti vojnu akciju.
I said, well, you are shooting craps with the destiny of your country.
The Bosnian president returned to his office to consult his generals. Was it possible the Americans were deceiving him?
Ja sam rekao da mi imamo snage da idemo dalje i da ne treba prihvatiti primirje.
Jer mi smo u tom trenutku imali i snage i sredstva za realizaciju tih zadataka koji smo već sebi unaprijed postavili.
But President Izetbegović had another worry, his Croat ally. A week earlier, the Americans had told President Tudjman to ease off.
Tudjman was very pleased to comply because he didn't want to over-strengthen the Muslims anyway.
Molim, to više nisu bila izravno hrvatska područja, mi bismo u svakom slučaju imali daljnjih gubitaka.
Mi smo znali šta to znači. U slučaju da nastavimo rat, mi bi ga morali voditi sami. Bez Hrvata i sa osudom svijeta. Takav rat nije imao nikakvih šansi za Bosance.
But Izetbegović told the Americans he would need to sell the ceasefire to his people.
He said, okay, we want the water, the electricity and the gas turned on.
Istina, htjeli smo da dobijemo na vremenu još. Ja sam prihvatio prekid vatre u roku od 5 dana pod uvjetom da se otvori Sarajevo.
Sio. Rodilo nam, brate. Evo ga dobro pravo.
The longest siege in modern history was over.
I'm pleased to announce that the parties in Bosnia have agreed to a ceasefire to terminate all hostile military activities.
The president's men rushed to turn the ceasefire into a peace treaty. They would apply all America's diplomatic muscle. They chose an unlikely venue.
Welcome to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, one of the largest and most diverse United States Air Force installations.
With his re-election looming, President Clinton gambled that cooped up in the base, the three Balkan presidents would hammer out a deal. He gave his men 17 days to twist their arms.
Are you optimistic about the talks?
I am. If I'm not, I wouldn't be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Americans' hope for peace depended on the man they once called a war criminal.
How confident are you the talks will succeed, sir? I don't hear you. Come over here. How confident are you the talks will succeed?
Well, I'm optimist. I believe the talks will succeed. We attach the great importance to peace initiative of the United States.
On behalf of President Clinton, I welcome you to the start of these historic peace talks. If we fail, the war will resume, and future generations will surely hold us accountable. And then I walked around to the other side of the table where they had been carefully placed, and I sort of pushed them together and urged them to shake hands, which they did.
Izetbegovic knew these talks would ratify the division of his country. He'd already agreed to share half of Bosnia with his dangerous allies, the Croats. The rest would go to the Serbs.